Welcome to geometry. So today we're going to be talking about our three new theorems. Notice that we're going into the proof section, okay? We're proving everything we know. So the first theorem is our side angle side theorem. And all it says is that notice two triangles are congruent if if you have two corresponding sides and an angle in between being congruent. Okay, so I would need another triangle that has this side and that side congruent, but also the angle in between. Then I can say that these two triangles are congruent. Let's look at an example. We have a T-chart here, and our exercise 1 says we have this given and we have what we need to prove. Remember that the first statement is the given. So let's write the first statement and the first reason. Okay, so notice all I did was just copy the given, and my reason for that was given. Okay, statement number 2 is what is the given telling me? Okay, so notice I need to prove these two triangles are congruent. That's where I want to go. And what I'm given is that AB is congruent to CB. Okay, so let's see. AB is congruent to CB. Okay, great. I can't really do anything with that information. It's just there. Now, here is the key. AB bisects an angle. Remember, we circle it and we put a half. Okay, if I'm bisecting an angle, I'm cutting it in half. And I'm bisecting angle ABC. Here we go. Angle A, B, C. BD is bisecting it. And if I'm bisecting an angle, that means I'm creating two, not one, but two equal angles, okay? Two of them. And let's name that. Perfect. Okay, so now I have a side, I have an angle, and I need another side. Notice that the angle needs to be in between two sides, so the only other side I have left is side BD. And what is side BD equal to? Well, notice that BD is in both triangles, so BD is actually congruent to itself. So statement number 3 is that BD is congruent to BD. And the reason for that, well, remember when something is equal to itself, we call that the reflexive property. The reflexive property. Finally, have I shown side angle side? Well, I have a side, I have an angle, and I have another side. Boom, yes. So now I can say that 4. I, what's the reasoning for that? Well, yes, this is my reasoning. Side, angle, side. Done. Let's look at our second theorem. Okay, and our second theorem says angle, side, angle. Same idea here. Two triangles are congruent if you have one side being congruent and the two angles on that side are also congruent. Okay, same exact thing. Now, if we read the definition here, it tells us that two triangles are congruent if a side and the adjacent angles. Remember that the word adjacent means next to. Okay, next to. That's what adjacent means. So if one side and the two angles next to that side are congruent, then those two triangles will be congruent. Let's look at an example. Here is one, okay? So we're going to use the angle side angle definition to prove that we have two congruent triangles, okay? Almost there, guys. Almost there. We're learning so much, and I'm so proud of all of you. You have no idea. We've come a long way. So let's use exercise 2. Q. Q is the midpoint of SN, and angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. Well, we already know what our first statement is. We don't have to think about this. So let's use the fact that Q is a midpoint. Remember, what does midpoint mean? Again, it means half. We have this other given here, and we don't know anything about that. It's just giving that to us. There's nothing we can do about it, but we can use the midpoint situation. So Q is the midpoint. Q is the midpoint of SN. What does that tell us? Give me a statement. What does that tell me? You in the blue shirt, the guy in the blue shirt. What about the girl in the yellow shirt? Oh, yes, you guys got it. QN is congruent to QS. Right? And the reason for that is because Q is the midpoint of SN. Perfect. Okay, well, so far, let's mark our diagram here. We have a midpoint, so we have these two sides are congruent. That's how we mark sides being congruent. And then angle 1 and angle 2 are also congruent. Boom and boom. Okay, so now, recall, we need two pairs of angles on the same line being congruent and one side being congruent. So far I have one pair of side, I have one pair of angles, and I need another angle. Well, the other angle is this one, and the other angle is that one. That would give us, why are those two angles congruent? Those two angles are congruent because they're vertical angles. Yes, we're killing it today, guys. So, what is the name of that angle? Well, that angle is two angles are congruent because vertical angles are congruent. Perfect. And notice that in this case, I am not using measures. I'm not using measures because I'm using the word congruent. Measures are equal and angles are congruent. They overlay on top of each other. So let's see. Do I have my three statements? Do I have an angle? Yes. Do I have a side? Yes. And do I have another angle? Perfect. So now I am done. I have three statements completed. I have a side, I have an angle, and I have another angle. Yes? So we have angle, side. Two triangles are congruent by angle, side, angle. Perfect. Let's look at our check for understanding, okay? This is going to lead us to our check for understanding. The side theorem, the last and very last one. This one is much simpler. This is saying that if I have two triangles, they are going to be congruent if all of their corresponding sides are also congruent. Okay, so all three sides must be congruent in order for these two triangles to be congruent. That's all that's saying. Okay, so let's look at this example, right? Now I'm going to lay it out for you, but you need to write it. You need to write it, okay? Exercise 3. We are given that W is a median. Now recall, what does that word mean? Median. We are given this piece and we need to explain why this is true. Now it says use paragraph proof and I will do that in class, but you guys need to set up your T-chart and do this. So recall, I need three sides be congruent. So I need zy being congruent to xy. You give me a statement for that. I also need zw being congruent to what, guys? Say it out loud so I can hear you. Ah, I can't hear you. wx. And finally, wy is congruent to wy. Those are your statements, and give me your corresponding reasons to that. I'll see you tomorrow in class. Have a great evening.